Good afternoon. I'm Mark McCormick, Chair of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission, Office of the Kansas Governor. I officially call this meeting of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission on Friday, May 3rd, to order by stating Kansas Open Meeting Act guidelines. Due to distance, health, and safety concerns, members of the public are not in attendance at this meeting. However, full access to this meeting is being provided by a medium of interactive communication. This virtual medium will provide members of the public without cost the ability to listen using teleconferencing as available. The agenda for this meeting has been posted on the Kansas Public Square website and may be requested by emailing the Kansas African American Affairs Commission office at kaaac.ks.gov. Each member of the commission staff and guests will state their name and title each time they begin speaking or voting so that the individuals can be readily identified by remote listeners. All participants are required to ensure that microphones, telephones, or electronic devices are muted when not speaking so that the ability of remote listeners or observers to hear the meeting is not necessarily impeded. A public comment opportunity may be provided at the beginning of each commission meeting following the roll call and the chairman's opening comments. During this meeting, the commission will not recess to a closed executive session pursuant to KSA 7543-19. Each motion, if any, will be clearly stated and restated before the commission, and the chairperson will announce the results of the final vote. Commissioners and guests, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Thank you and welcome to the Kansas African American Affairs Commission meeting. We move now to roll call. Commissioner Davis.
Present. Thank you.
Commissioner New.
I know she stated she was driving.
I'm sorry, it took me a minute to hit that button. Present.
That's okay.
Thank you.
You drive carefully.
Yes.
Commissioner Penn.
Present.
I have no comments, so we can move right into the work of the day. Executive Director Nell.
On the agenda, I've got approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which I just emailed out again. The minutes are always also on the website. I tend to get those up by at least Monday or Tuesday. But I did just email out the minutes of the last meeting. The main points being that we landed on a proposed language change. That was the whole meeting, was just landing on this proposed language change that's listed in the old business.
Well, I will accept a motion to accept those minutes if we're ready for that.
Yep. Commissioner Davis moved to approve the minutes of the April 5th meeting.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner, I know Commissioner New is driving.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay. Thank
Motion
you.
Carries. Motion carries.
So this is Executive Director. Now, the old business is just the proposed language change concerning meetings that the wording will be, and I'll put this, let me put this in the chat. I know, okay. KAAAC will meet at least 4 times a year. Notice of meetings must be provided to those requesting notice. There is no Kansas Open Meetings Act duty to provide notice unless it has been requested. That is the entirety of the proposed change.
This is the chair. Are there any questions or comments about this?
No.
Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept this change.
Commissioner Davis moved to propose move to accept the proposed change in language for section 6 regarding meetings. At 6.1, KAAC will meet at least 4 times a year. Notice of meetings must be provided to those requesting notice. There is no Kansas Open Meetings Act duty to provide notice unless it has been requested.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner New. I second that.
Great. Any discussion? Super. Please signify by either saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you all.
The new
Hey,
business.
go ahead. I'm so sorry. When you were asking any chance for questions, I did have a question. I just could not unmute myself in time. Can we open the floor to any discussions? Because I wasn't here last meeting.
Sure. This is the chair. Sure.
Okay, so it looks like last meeting that we're actually going to meet in person. Is that right? Throughout the summer? Is that just looking at the agenda?
No, this is Director Nell. I believe what that was referring to is that there's some leadership brunches. They are not meetings of KAAC. They're something that we are doing jointly. And it was also a part of the email that I sent out just today, that there are leadership brunches that are doing jointly with KAAC and KBLC. There's several around the state. They are not required, but if you wanted to attend the one that's local, I've never asked anyone to travel outside of their local area for any event. But yeah, those are not meetings of KAAC. Those are leadership brunches.
With KBLC. Okay, so they're just more so leadership brunches with KBLC. Okay, I try to go onto the website too. Okay.
This is the chair. Executive Director Nell, do you have more for us?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to just go to the bylaws to continue the discussion with the bylaws. So this is where it becomes difficult for me to share because I've got everything's on one monitor. Does everyone have the bylaws? I emailed out this morning. Can everyone pull up the bylaw? And I know Dr. New is driving. That's going to be troublesome because the portion that's on about meetings is very large. And I don't know if there's benefit to keeping a portion that large, or what we've been doing very successfully is streamlining the bylaws down to just what they need to cover. So the portion in the original bylaws, let me get there. It's Article 8. And there's quite a bit there. So for example, if I'm reading, it starts off with all meetings shall be held in the office. So we realized that needed to be sort of massaged out. It should meet at least 4 times a year. It should be the duty of the chair to schedule regular or special meetings of KAAC unless otherwise ordered by KAAC. It talks about executive session. It talks about quorum. It talks about attendance, but we sort of covered attendance, this notion of if you miss what the attendance regulations should be. It talks about voting. It talks about how to remove a commissioner. So this is one of those things that I feel like this is where I wanted to open it up to sort of discussion of the whole. How much of that do you want to keep? How much of that should be kept? How much you just, to discuss that in terms of what to do with the next section. We do not have to keep it, right? So this is not necessarily a question of rewording what's there. Like, we don't have to reword it. We don't need to, if you don't want to effectively establish what quorum is, you have freedom to change this any way you feel like it needs to be changed. Does that make sense? So it's not that we're trying to reword 8.2 and then reword 8.3. You can get rid of 8.2 and 8.3. Those are just, arbitrary. Okay, that's what I was going to say.
This is the chair. Do you have a recommendation?
I I don't. So I was hoping, I know, well, honestly, a lot of you have lots of experience on different boards, quite frankly, boards, commissions with various bylaws. And as I said, when I was looking at, for example, KAAC's bylaws or the Commission on Disabilities bylaws, everyone's bylaws look so different that it's difficult for me to even say, oh, this is the standardized bylaws. So, for example, the way it's written correct right now, do we need the line that says it shall be the duty of the chairpersons to schedule regular or special meetings of KAAC? Do we need a line that specifically says executive sessions may be called by the chairperson or by any executive committee? Like, is this needed? And I ask about this, is it needed? Because having gone through the audit, if it's in here, people are going to hold our feet to the fire. So if we don't want something to be nailed down, we should not nail it down. Last caveat, we always need to remember, right now we're all very wrapped up in this governor and this executive director and this commission. What I'm really striving to do, because at some point, it's not going to be this governor, it's not going to be this executive director, and it's not going to be this commission, but these bylaws may still be here. So think about everyone who's in the position 5 years from now. What is to benefit them? Okay, I'm done talking.
The chair would like to recognize Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. It may be easy just to go down the list one by one. I think section A, we've stated already, but I mean, it's common sense. I don't see any problem with that. And should be someone's duty to schedule the meetings. So, B doesn't hand tie us. C is an issue with our electronic meetings because at the beginning of this meeting, it stated we would not go into executive session. So these bylaws were written before we had Zoom meetings. So if it would come up during an electronic meeting that we needed an executive session, we would have to have the technology to do that. So we probably need to make some allowance unless we're going to say that executive sessions can only be held at in-person meetings. The quorum, I mean, that should stay. And we've addressed, attendance. This is just, we addressed the commissioner's responsibility as far as attendance. So that reference can be taken out. Just the opportunity for the public to speak, which we do allow even on our electronic meetings. And then we can just go on through the list. It may not, this may be the proverbial elephant, just one bite at a time. We may get through it pretty quickly, actually.
This is the chair. Executive Director Nell, were you trying to get in? Was there a comment you wanted to make?
Mike, this is Director Nell. My comment is, it's interesting to me, this blurb that we read at the beginning of this meeting that was read when I first got this job. But again, in asking other commissions, do you guys have a blurb that you read at the beginning of your meetings? They don't. And even when I asked legal, they're like, no, I don't know where that came from. So remember we talked about this, and I told legal, because I checked with a lot of legal on these things, like even, what happens if people get deployed? They're like, even the fact that we record these meetings becomes problematic, because now I've had appointments with the Kansas Historical Society, because now I'm creating a record. So like, I'm not exactly sure where this blurb that we read at the beginning of meetings, I'm not even sure where that actually came from, whose idea it was, how it got established, or why we do that.
Oh, the chair would recognize Commissioner New.
Yes, that came about during COVID, and any governmental agency in the state of Kansas that met had to have that statement. Perhaps it's not relevant anymore, but that is the reason why we started it.
This is the chair. Thank you, Dr. New. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Commissioner Davis. Probably the part that is no longer relevant as far as the COVID part is for personal safety, et cetera. But there's actually an advantage to the public to our having electronic meetings, because someone who's in Colby, Kansas can actually come to our meeting. And, I kind of like the blurb. I mean, it's a little long. Some of it is COVID specific, but, our meeting just doesn't start out of the cold, and
Oh,
it
I
does
am.
lay the rules for
Okay,
engagement.
no problem. Elder Newt just left. Let me make sure.
There we go. I muted her. Go ahead.
This is the chair. Was that?
Were you finished? Oh, yeah. Were you finished? Okay.
This is the chair. I guess the question is, Executive Director, no. Will the inclusion of this passage create some unintended consequences for us? Is that what we're wrestling with?
Director Nell, I'm not sure it's the issue of unintended consequences. I'm just at a point of questioning everything that I inherited, right? And I understand that blurb came out of COVID, but this notion of do we need to keep it because it's not in the statute, and it's not, this blurb is not in the bylaws, right? So there's nothing that holds us to it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, again, I'm thinking the people 5 years down the road, the people 10 years down the road, the executive director that, there's a new administration change and someone just gets dropped in here. They're going to do what I do, which is read the bylaws and read the statute to try to figure out what their parameters are. So that's, I don't know. Like, the blurb it's neither here nor there to me. I'm just thinking about the next.
Yeah, the chair recognizes Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, electronic meetings, were not a thing, on a widespread basis before. But for other organizations, it is recommended that, particularly if you have people who can call in on telephone, where you don't have the face to link with the mouth moving and the voice, they really don't necessarily know who is speaking. So it's not a bad idea for the person speaking to announce themselves. I think the only issue we'd have to decide would be the executive session issue, because that does say that we will not do something. And, if we had the ability to, if we had the need to do it, we would have to have a way to exclude any non-commission member from that. We'd go into a different room, so to speak, electronically. But I would, and we can always come up with the methodology for that. But we have said that we will not have an executive session during this meeting, which does limit our ability somewhat.
This is the chair. I agree with what Commissioner Davis has said about the convenience that our Zoom meetings have. I would like to leave open the option of doing that, but I don't know if I want language that demands that, because, prior to COVID, my understanding is that most of the meetings were in person. And now most of our meetings are Zoom meetings. I would prefer that our bylaws give us flexibility on that, as opposed to commanding us to do something.
This is the director now. I mean, what the old business language, I think, allows that flexibility, because it just says that KAAC will meet at least 4 times a year and the notice will be provided. Right. So that means that KAAC has to meet at least 4 times a year and there will be notice. So just like I noticed this on Public Square, if it's in person, the director would be putting on Public Square that this meeting is in person, such and such room, such and such time. So I think that's sticks to the statute enough, but allows flexibility for future commissions. If they're meeting in person, to say we're meeting in person, such and such, such and such. If we're meeting online, here's the link. I think my question was essentially, do we need to read the blurb at all? If this blurb is going to become a part of how KAAC operates, does it need to be included in the bylaws? I'm less concerned. Well, no, I guess I'm not less concerned about what the blurb actually says.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Commissioner Davis. The blurb is useful for for electronic meetings, Zoom meetings, unless we are going to also live stream an in-person meeting, then it would not be needed for an in-person meeting. I mean, it's uniquely useful for electronic meetings. If we're there in person, then it's you don't really need it. I wouldn't think. Again, that's a situation that wasn't, forecast 20 years ago when the bylaws were created.
But this is the chair. I agree with that as well. My question for our executive director would be, just for clarification, the language that we have already allows us to meet via Zoom. So we wouldn't necessarily have to spell this out in verbiage in our bylaws, correct?
Yes, this is Director Nell. That's the way I read it. We have been joined by Commissioner Westbrook.
Hello.
Hello, Commissioner Westbrook. Any further discussion about this? Are we at a point where we need to make a decision about what we're going to do?
There's nothing. I'm sorry, this is Director Nell. There's nothing to be done because that's not. I guess the thing that would be done is, are you going to say anything about this blurb in the bylaws?
This is the chair. I don't think it's necessary. I'd like to hear from Commissioner Davis as well, though.
I was just going to say the same thing. We do it as a public service, and you can tweak the blurb to remove the COVID references. But if it's not there, that doesn't mean we can't do it. So yeah, the least restrictive approach would be preferred for me.
Okay. This is the chair. Should we move? Commissioner New, are you trying to get in, or?
She's here now.
Okay.
She's at home now.
Great.
Okay, so this is Director Nell. So for the sake of the minutes, what I'm going to record is that the blurb, and I'll probably come up with a better phrase than blurb, but I guess we've been referring to it the blurb. The blurb at the beginning of the meeting, it's a function left over from COVID times, but not necessary. It's something that could be read for the sake of virtual meetings, but would not be necessary for in-person meetings.
This is the chair. I'm fine with that. Is there any other discussion about that from Commissioner Westbrook or Commissioner New or Commissioner Penn?
I would say for the sake of the minutes, but this blurb is not going to be included in the bylaws. Okay. Okie dokie. So we're still on section 8. The statute only says the advisory commission shall meet at least 4 times a year. The chairperson shall call additional meetings, and a majority of members constitutes a quorum. That's it. That's all the statute says. Very short. So everything else that we have is been added. If the statute says that a majority of members constitutes a quorum, I don't think we need this additional line in the bylaw saying a quorum is a majority of the appointed commissioners. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. So I don't know if we need to make a, well, here we go. We just need to rewrite it, right? I'm going to assume that everything's being struck and we need to rewrite it. Is there anything else that we think should be kept? You said you want to keep. Hang on. I'm
the chair. Are you asking us a particular question?
Yeah, I mean, just was what do you want to keep? I'm operating from, I've typed up the bylaws and I'm working from, so I'm striking things and changing wording. Do we want to keep this point is that it's the duty of the chairperson to schedule regular or special meetings?
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Commissioner Davis, In in the bylaws, it says the dates should be published at the beginning of each fiscal year. And obviously that's beyond what the statute says. I mean, it's a little more specificity. So I don't know what the will of the group would be as far as setting the meeting dates. I mean, it's not an unreasonable request for people to know. Well, we would probably need to know when the meetings are going to be. So I don't think that's an onerous thing to leave in there. The chairperson schedules the meetings, as opposed to, a vote of the majority can schedule a meeting. I mean, it's up to the chair to schedule a meeting. I don't really have a problem until we get down to E2, the public comment section. It says the first 15 minutes are reserved. Does that mean it occurs during those first 15 minutes? We can't do anything else during those 15 minutes, or there's no public comment after the 15 minutes? I'm not exactly sure how to interpret that. That's all.
This is the chair. It's interesting how how things are beginning to evolve from where we were before to where we are now. I'd like for some of those things just to be optional or at the discretion of the chair or the vice chair. And I'd welcome any discussion about that.
Dr. Lewis has joined us as well.
Good afternoon. I apologize for my tardiness.
Hello, Dr. Lewis. So any thoughts about what the executive director has raised?
This is Commissioner New. I would agree that the meetings, the calling of the meetings, the need for special meetings should be at the discretion of the chair. And I would suggest that that language be left. I think that in reference to what the chair just mentioned, we can always use the word may, so that does not hold us to having to conduct things in that way. And then to what Commissioner Lewis said, I would think that when we have the point about the public having comment time, it could say if a person from the public would like to share comments, that would occur during the first 15 minutes. So if they're not there to do that, we don't have to reserve those 15 minutes for that. Just my thoughts on what I'd heard getting transitioned.
As the chair, I would tend to agree with those thoughts. What do you think, Executive Director Nell?
Just trying to figure out the wording. So this is Director Nell. Given what Commissioner New just said, I'm looking at and the discussion around public comment. Currently, it reads, all KAAC meetings are open to the public, and the first 15 minutes of each regular meeting shall be reserved for public participation. The public may only be excluded from KAAC meetings in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, KSA 75-4317, for executive sessions. So again, it's the consideration of the wording that Dr. Davis was asking about. Do we have to, I don't know if we have to enumerate that it's restricted to the first 15 minutes. However, I know there could be benefit of saying the public can't just chime in at any given point, right? Like I see the benefit of saying there will be time in reserved, and then, yeah. And so, but again, how do you just, it's just a question of how do you want to word it? And do we need this part about the public may only be excluded from KAAC meetings in compliance with the open meetings?
The chair recognizes Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Commissioner Davis. I was just thinking the easiest way is just to say that opportunity for public comment will be placed on the agenda, or some version without restricting, time limits, as long as there is an opportunity for it, and it's before the meeting, it's on the agenda, so someone will know when public comment will be taken, and it's specific but vague. The vagueness gives us flexibility and you're not time locked or hamstrung by the time. Open Meeting Act was not a buzzword 15, 20 years ago. People are in tune to it now. So, that may be something that everyone's bylaws, at least for governmental meetings, will include at some point. I mean, it doesn't affect the way we do business, but it's in there. I'll stop.
So my wording right now is incomplete. I've got each meeting will have an opportunity for public comment. And how should we finish that sentence?
At the discretion of the chair. This is the chair.
Well, I was going to say on the agenda will list, we'll announce the opportunity for public comment. Unless we anticipate a meeting at which we are not going to take any public comment.
This is Director Nell. That's an interesting point, because again, when I was talking with legal, it's this idea of, do we have to, the public, it is an open meeting. The public can always access. So if anyone says, what's your link? The links are posted. The public can always come. That does not mean that the public should show up with the expectation of always being able to talk. For example, the legislature is an open meeting. However, you cannot stand in the gallery and give your opinion. So there's two different things. We can have an open meeting without public comment. So it's this idea of, and quite frankly, now that I think about it, the statute does not require us to allow public comment. It has to be an open meeting, but there's no press to say the public can comment. Just like you can go sit in the gallery and watch the legislature, but you can't talk to them. So again, this is not in the statute. Do we want it in the bylaws?
This is the chair. I thought that the language about discretion solved for that.
This Commissioner Davis, just listening to you go through the logic of that, I think you convinced me. Most of our chairs would probably provide for public comment, but we're not obligated to. So I kind of like your logic behind that.
Commissioner Lewis, I totally agree with that. This is we're required to have a meeting in the public, not with the public. So that the word may or whatever, the discretion. I like that language.
This Commissioner New, I would agree. I think we visualize school board meetings where people can have 3 minutes each at the start of the meeting. But if it's not a part of the statute, then we don't have to consider it. So I agree.
That is the chair. I guess we can move on to the next portion then, can't we?
Hang on. I got to finalize some wording. To the public, period. It's open to the public because that's true. Okay, hang on. I miss having 15 screens. All KAAAC meetings are open to the public, period. Let's try. Okay, I'm going to drop some language into the chat.
This is the chair. So these would be edits that you are recommending.
Yes.
Executive Director now. Okay.
Yes. All KAAAC meetings are open to the public, period. The public may only be excluded from KAAAC meetings in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Each meeting may have the opportunity for public comment at the discretion of the chair. Okay, so I think that is in the chat is the proposed language that we've sort of landed on.
Okay. This is the chair. I would accept a motion to accept these changes.
This is Commissioner Davis. Would love to say so moved. I don't know if I have the wording of all of them because it's more than just that one change.
It's in the chat.
Well, I saw. Okay, let me go back. All right. Okay. And we didn't, so we're not changing anything up top then. That would be part of this motion, not really. Okay. We'll do one at a time. This is section.
Don't worry about the
Don't worry
sections because
about
the section
that. You said it's going to change.
we're
Okay.
all off with the sections. I'm going to have to go through and renumber.
Right.
Right.
Okay. In that case, I would move rewording of attendance references in our bylaws to read all KAAC meetings are open to the public. The public may only be excluded from KAAC meetings in compliance with the Open Meetings Act for executive sessions. Each meeting may have an opportunity for public comment at the discretion of the chair.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I second. Commissioner New.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion about this particular point? Great. Please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
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 Motion passes. This is the chair. What is the next passage that we have to address? Executive Director, no.
Here's my alarm to remind us we need to do elections. Do we wish to have, because currently in the bylaws as they are stated, let's go back up to the very beginning. The discussion, I hear you hearing this, that we should keep the language that says commissioners shall designate regular meeting date and publish the dates of the year in advance of the start of the fiscal year. Do we want to keep that?
This is the chair. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. You know, that language came from a time, I think, where the majority of our meetings were in person and that there were only 4. As a commission, we've agreed that we needed to meet more often to try and address a broader scope of issues. I'm not certain about how to move forward. I'd like some discussion amongst commissioners about this. It seems as though we have changed fundamentally how we meet. Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I think the way we're meeting right now, we're still meeting the requirement. You know, we ramped it up, but if all of a sudden things look good from a social perspective, we may choose to go back to quarterly. So this gives us the flexibility to go up, but we can
change. The question on the table is the wording. This is Dr. New, or Dr. I was looking at Dr. New. This is not Dr. New. I was looking at the question on the table is, do we keep this wording? Like, I'm hyper focused on what words are actually in the bylaws. Do we keep the wording, commissioners shall designate a regular meeting date and publish the dates each year in advance of the start of the fiscal year? Do we keep that or do we scratch that? It's not about whether or not we're in person or out.
Commissioner Davis, I think it's to our advantage to know in advance when we're meeting. And, a published date doesn't mean it's etched in stone. We can always change it. I mean, it doesn't say that you're locked to those dates.
Okay, so we're keeping that.
That's just me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is my next question. Are we keeping this language? It shall be the duty of the chairperson to schedule regular or special meetings in KAAC unless otherwise ordered. I'd like to take pains to note that that's the duty of the chairperson, not the executive director.
How does this is the chair? How does the commission feel about that?
This Commissioner New, I agree. I think the chairperson has to have a role that is clearly defined, and the executive director also would have a clearly defined role. I think this would fall under the purview of the chairperson's duties because they are the chair of the KAAC.
So this is Director Nell. Here's something that's very interesting because there in the original copy of the bylaws, there is an entire section that goes into great detail about it's called duties of officers, right? So again, I think right now, if it's kind of like that's almost its own thing, duties of officers. By also, we have to elect officers because this is the last meeting at the end of the fiscal year. So we need to even today hold elections for chair and secretary, which interestingly, there is no vice chair in the statute. It's chair and secretary. And if there's a secretary, I mean, it has been me taking notes and writing the minutes and getting them up on the website. So, this idea of righting the ship and getting everything running the way it's actually supposed to run. If there's a secretary, then, because the executive director is not the secretary. So, just getting everything back to going the way it's supposed to go. If there's a secretary, the secretary probably should be taking notes and writing up the minutes. The executive director has all the passwords and access to Public Square and access to all the website to get it up there. But unless we want to change it and say the executive director takes notes.
This is the chair. Commissioner Davis, are you trying to get in?
Yeah. Commissioner Davis, it's not unusual in organizations for there to be an elected secretary, which in some organizations is almost a ceremonial role. I mean, there's a true executive staff member who takes the minutes. Now that secretary can review them before they're submitted for approval. I mean, it can go either way, but having a secretary does not exclude the executive director from participating in something that he or she might just really enjoy doing.
Yeah, this is the chair. We do have a hard stop here pretty soon. Do we have a question on the floor now about that language before we get to the elections, Executive Director? No?
I mean, no. This is just part of the continual discussion, just to rework and massage. We do have to do elections. That was one thing we got pinged on, is not getting elections done. So we need to get the elections done. So we need to do that. I think and I will type up to the best of my knowledge, we have only today made 3 changes in wording. We've made a decision to keep that the commission shall regulate a meeting date, and we've made the decision to keep what's in the chat right now open to the public may only be excluded, and the public may have the opportunity. So what's in the chat, there's only been 3 wording changes that we've dealt with.
As chair, I'm fine with those if we're prepared now to move into our elections.
Yeah, I think we have to for time's sake.
Yeah.
Okay. Do the chair should probably run the elections, or do you want?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had to do something here on the side. So we only have 2 offices. This is the chair. We only have 2 offices that we're nominating for, correct?
That is correct.
I'll ask the commission which position would they like to start with in terms of nominations. I am a collaborative person. Yes, Commissioner Davis.
I was going to suggest an easier approach. I'm very happy with our elected officers at this point, and unless one of them wants to step down, that we reelect our president or nominate our current president and ask our vice chair to serve as secretary.
This is the chair. How does that sound to the rest of the commission?
This is Commissioner Lewis. I am in 100% agreement with that.
If that's the case, I will.
Commissioner New, I am as well.
Commissioners Westbrook and Penn.
Yes, Commissioner
Sounds
Westbrook,
good.
I'm also in agreement.
And this is Commissioner Penn. Sounds good.
This is the chair. As the chair, I'm not sure if I should be presiding over an election in which I am a candidate.
We could ask this commission, they ask our immediate past chair, Dr. New, to proceed with.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I was just about to make that statement, so we're all on the same page. So at this point, we have received nominations from, I believe, Commissioner Davis, that our current officers remain in their position with the adjustment that Commissioner Lewis would become the secretary and Commissioner McCormick would continue as the chair. Did I state that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. So,
Sorry, this is Commissioner Lewis. Am I the current secretary?
well, I thought you were the current co-chair, so that's why I wanted to make sure.
This is the chair. I think the secretary is Commissioner McRoy.
Commissioner McRoy. Okay. So my
Dr. Lewis, your face was classic right there.
Okay. So for my clarity, I thought they said we don't have a co-chair in the bylaws. We have the secretary is supposed to be the co-chair.
Secretary. That's it. It's just
that's it.
Well, yeah. It's
okay.
The statute. I'm sorry. This is Director Nell. The statute says chair and secretary.
Correct.
Currently, the bylaws say vice chair / secretary, but of course, that's the bylaws. And we can change the bylaws.
Don't have it. Not today. All right.
Okay.
So as corrected, do we have a motion to approve that our current chair and co-chair / secretary remain in their current positions?
Commissioner Davis, I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Lewis. I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, after it's been moved and seconded, that our current chair and secretary / co-chair remain in their current positions, would you please signify either by raising your hand or stating aye? Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? If not, the motion carries. Thank you
This is
all.
the chair. I abstained.
And you abstained. Thank you. Please make that part of our record, Executive Director Nell. Thank you.
This is the chair. Thank you so much, Dr. New. This is the chair. Executive Director New, did you have any announcements that you wanted to make before we close?
Certainly. There are quite a few exciting events that are happening in Topeka around the 70th anniversary of the Brown decision. We hope that you all are able to come up and celebrate with us. Most notably are, is one event, the play, Now Let Me Fly. It will be on Friday, May 17th at White Concert Hall on the campus of Washburn University, beginning at 7:00 p.m. And it's just a play commemorating not just the Topeka case, but all of the 5 cases that went together nationwide and were represented before the Supreme Court. And it's free. And 2 of the major actors of the play this year are Jason Durden and Deborah Joy Winans from Greenleaf. They'll be playing 2 roles, and Kevin Wilmot will be our host for the evening. So we certainly hope you'll come up and enjoy that. And if you would like to come, please let me know. I'll put you on the special guest list, and you'll be able to come also to the hospitality event that will follow as members of KAAAC. And then that Saturday, there's a homecoming for all the Topeka people who are yet living, who attended any of the 5 segregated schools in Topeka. And it'll be a full pink picnic and everything else, but probably one of the highlights is you'll get to hear their stories. So we invite you to come that Saturday, the 18th, starting at 10 o'clock a.m., I believe, and ending at 3.
To the chair. Thank you, Dr. New.
Thank you.
Anything else, Executive Director Nell?
Yes, this is Director Nell. Thank you for those events. There's so many events going on surrounding Brown v. Board. It's quite encouraging. So the thing that is on the agenda, the brunches that are listed on the agenda are joint events between KAAAC and KBLC. We did these series of brunches a couple of years ago, and we're by happenstance, by accident, with no plan. So they are happening again. Those dates are all locked in, and there's several different cities. As always, I am not demanding, requiring, or impressing upon you to attend any of them because they're outside of the normal calendar for KAAAC's anything. But if you would like to attend the one that's in your town, there will be a registration link. They are free. They're open to the public. The plot is Kay Monk Morgan, the CEO of Kansas Leadership Center, is going to be the keynote speaker, and she's going to just talk about leadership in general in the Black community. We also have asked Melissa King, who's the head of appointments, and if not Melissa, then someone else will talk about the importance of, or the opportunity of, boards and commissions. With the overall arch of these things is how to get our community just more involved in government, more involved in just anything. So leadership, boards and commissions. Then Taylor Overton, who is the Office of Minority and Women Business Affairs, is also coming along to talk about opportunities of entrepreneurship and in minority business development. So between those things, leadership, boards and commissions, and business entrepreneurship opportunities in the state of Kansas. So that's sort of the plot. It may be different. Sometimes we might get Secretary Tolan to come if he can show up to talk about what's going on with the Department of Commerce. As we know, there's so much economic development coming to Kansas right now. It's almost staggering. So just to try to get information into the Black community about how to take advantage of this economic development that's coming to the state of Kansas. So those dates are listed. They're all brunches. So think 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. timeframe situation. They will be free. And because I know the question will be asked, KBLC is floating the cost. KAAC's not putting any money into it. It's all KBLC's doing the fundraising, sponsorships, and it's not KAAC money.
Great. This is the chair. Thank you, Executive Director Nell. I will take a motion. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Davis, so moved.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Lewis, a second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Great. Please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for another productive meeting. Appreciate you all. See you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stopped.